Officially recording now. Welcome, everybody. Oh, fun. We have Tessia and Alan and Todd and Steve and all sorts of faces that are familiar and beloved. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so today is all about Vajra energy. And it might be helpful for me to know if you're new to Sunday sessions or if you've been here before, or kind of if in general you're new to this work. And blessings from Belize. Thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, you can tell us where you're from. That's always really fun. It's an interesting thing to sort of single out Vajra energy, which is what I'm kind of purporting to do today, because there's no way that you can single out one of these transformations, one of these wisdom energies from the rest, as I will kind of vaguely try to explain. But another one of the kind of magical things about Sunday sessions for me is that it's not really about understanding, it's more about like being inside the relationship with the mystic, with our own creative essence, with the sangha, and just sort of allowing things to come through. So there will be moments where I will be referencing a fairly dense body of teachings. And if that makes you feel anxious or like you wish you knew what was going on or whatever, I get it. Try to work with that because mostly we are, I like to think of it as skipping a stone off the surface of a vast body of water. And we get to feel the whatever we feel, but kind of the essence of what these Dharma teachings are, and however that sits inside our own systems and our own perspectives and understandings and whatever our belief systems are, etc., without necessarily getting all the didactic. Like I'm not going to be going into a really extensive kind of teaching here. So, and mostly we'll get to write and play and stuff. Okay, so everybody's mostly hearing me okay. It seems like Benjamin's maybe not, but it seems like most people. Okay, so most people are got great. Okay, and Benjamin's back in volume. It's perfect volume settings land. Thanks for helping him out, you all. That's lovely to see. Okay, so before we do any sort of sitting, I actually am going to give you just a little bit of an orientation as to where we're going today, and then we'll sit and then we'll write. I think that'll be the order. If you are new, it's probably a good idea for you to kind of, first of all, make sure that you have all the things that you need. So pen, paper is fine. If you want to write on your device, that's fine too. You might want to set yourself up with kind of a cozy little nest. You might want. I usually have like the desk, the meditation cushion, and then the bolster and the yoga mat over there. So many different kind of environs for wherever we go in stretching, sitting, writing, and sparking change. So, just as a matter of kind of overview, what we're looking at here is there are, according to this teaching, Dzogchen teaching, Vajrayana teaching, there are these five Buddha families or five wisdom lights, five dakinis, and it's impossible to like fully explain what they really are, but one of the useful teachings behind uh, or kind of one of the useful things that these teachings can elucidate is that there are particular ways that we get encumbered, and these particular ways that we get encumbered, which are on this little map here, transform into particular liberated patterns. Okay. And we're mostly going to work with aversion and anger and how that transforms into clarity and mirror-like wisdom. So that's down in the bottom, the blue circle, Vajra energy, it's called the Vajra Buddha family. Um, and I'm not going to go into all of the other transformations, but I will talk a little bit about this movement into Vajra from the central Buddha family, which is called Buddha family. Um, and the Buddha family is characterized by the encumbrance of ignorance of our true nature, which is sometimes referred to as the root poison. But the transformation of that ignorance is all-encompassing wisdom. But there's sort of an association with Buddha family or of Buddha family with formlessness and an association of Vajra family with form. So that relationship between formlessness and form is something that we can kind of play with. And when we think about how we hold aversion and anger and how we work with aversion and anger, there's just a whole lot more nuance here in thinking about it through this schema than the way that we have probably been conditioned to think about it. And one of the reasons I'm leaving this slide deck up for so long is that, as I said, it's hard to isolate one family and just talk about one transformation without it being confusing. Like some of the email that I sent, I don't know if everybody got it, because I think if you're already on the list, you probably didn't get this email, but I sent an email yesterday to the people who were not on the Sunday sessions list, kind of inviting them to join and to come today. And I sort of framed the work that we're going to do today around looking at the shame shields, which I'll talk about in a second, but also, the importance of working with our relationship with anger and aversion. And when I say that, I'm like a little tentative because there's a degree to which what I'm focusing on here today in the poems that I chose, there's a degree to which you would think the teaching is about figuring out how to be more assertive and, unleash all of your repressed self-expression, even if that means, um, letting out your aversions. And that's not really where I'm going, because some people lean really heavily on aversion and anger. And if you lean really heavily on aversion and anger, if your tendency when you feel scared is to go toward anger, then you have really different work to do than what I just talked about. So everyone kind of needs to figure out what is appropriate for them. But we'll sort of play with this, how do we work with the part of ourselves that doesn't know how to set boundaries, doesn't know how to find clarity? How do we work with that part of ourselves? But then how do we also recognize the part of ourselves that leans too heavily on anger, or how do we recognize it if that is the case? So that's kind of part of what we'll be playing with today. And there's
Elise, let's get your breakfast, okay?
do that. And there's another sort of interesting correlation between these teachings from the mandala and some of the teachings around shame that are more kind of standard Western psychology teachings. Okay, so that's what we'll play with. But let's do a little sit first. Okay, so get yourself comfortable. And one of the things that we often do in Sunday sessions is I take a little time for people to actually stand up and what I call greet the space. So you might stand up and go to the door that you came in through, kind of go to the portal and bow to your space and walk yourself around your space and kind of check it out. Potentially this is your practice space. So you might have altars to greet, candles to light, murtis that you are in relationship with. Feel yourself inside these potentially four walls, inside shelter, ground underneath you, big sky above. And then when you're ready, you can make your way back and you might choose to sit facing the east, if you know where the east is. Take your time. As you settle into your seat, settle into your relationship with the ground underneath you, and feel the solidity of the ground supporting you and the stability and solidity of your body. So feel yourself in this physical form. And you may not want to be still, so you might find that you want to rock the pelvis forward and back, which is actually a really wonderful way to then find a happy seat for yourself. So just rocking the pelvis forward and back, perhaps feeling that little anterior tilt and then the posterior tilt, the scooping action, and just noticing all of the nuance, how the groins and the kind of musculature of adductors and hip flexors are all involved in this subtle rocking, if that's what you're doing. Just notice the profound intelligence of the body. And if the body needs anything else, like perhaps the body needs to actually stretch out more fully before you sit. So you're welcome to do that. But maybe you find your way into some kind of a stillness and feel yourself inside the refuge of your intention. The intention to practice in order to connect with intrinsic awakeness. The intention to practice in order to alleviate unnecessary conditioned suffering. The intention to contribute to the freedom of others, the ease of others. The intention to dissolve the confusion around separateness. And whatever your heart mind presents to you as intention. Take yourself into that query. What am I here for? And feel the rise and fall of the breath. And you might imagine the movement of the breath as a force that can communicate your intention inwardly and outwardly. So you can let the mind relax. You don't have to hold on to intention. Let it just subtly expand within and trust that it gets transmitted externally, if there is such a thing as inner and outer at all. And as you trace the rise and fall of the breath with your awareness, Open up awareness of the heart center. You might become aware of the base of the heart, breathing into the base of the heart, breathing out from the base of the heart. Feeling yourself through the breath, opening up awareness of the central channel, this energetic line that runs down the center of your body in front of the spine. The mandala at the most kind of fundamental level is the mandala of perception, of awareness. And you can also think of the mandala as the body itself. You feel the central channel, that's the center of the mandala of your experience. Every time anything enters into your awareness, it is arising from this substrate of the body with all of its nuance, all of its sensitivity, these sense doors. So you're always in the center of the mandala of your own perception, the mandala of the body itself, the central channel, the center of this energetic experience. And as we're working with this very particular body of teachings, the mandala of the five wisdom lights, I will chant the seed syllables. Okay, so just if you're not familiar, just take in the sound. And if you are familiar, you can draw up in your awareness the iconography, the color, the element, whatever comes to your awareness. Ba, 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 ba. Ah. Ah. Breathe. Breathe. Sa. 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 Imagine yourself surrounded by and supported by all of the wisdom energy, all of the wisdom light of the fully activated mandala. And just rest, and leaning into the support. Now, dissolution. We'll begin with Vajra and chant each seed syllable. And with the final chanting of Bum back at the center, all of the wisdom light dissolves into the Bum at the heart of the Buddha energy in the center of the mandala, which then dissolves into shunyata, into emptiness. Breathe. Sa. Ba. And when you're ready, bring the hands gently together at the heart. Of course, you can stay in meditation if you like, but I'll start to carry us into writing and such. But in this little seam between practice, sitting practice, and then kind of coming into a different element of practice, the mind gets more engaged. So just watch how that happens. And may all of what we discover, all of what transpires, any transformation that we experience, may all benefits be extended out to all sentient beings. Om. Okay. Yeah, sometimes we get into a really beautiful space in meditation. We just want to stay there. So I just want to encourage you, if you need to stay there a little longer, just reach forward and turn down your volume and let yourself linger in that space. Um, we have some crazy light issues here. Okay, so this first poem that I'm going to bring up, some of you have seen it before. It's, to me, it's like really potent. And I also know it's, I have a lot of like meaning layered into it because to me it feels like such a like quintessential Vajra energy kind of a poem because it's about reintroducing wolves, apex predators into Yellowstone and then what happens to the ecosystem and all the healing in the ecosystem when that Vajra energy comes back. So it feels like a good a good place to start. And you can just consider it as an allegory, kind of a metaphor for, the ecosystem of your life and what happens when it's brought into balance and when Vajra energy, liberated Vajra energy, like unencumbered Vajra energy, clarity, mirror-like wisdom, when that comes alive, like what will be possible. Let's see, having said that, let me see if I can actually find the poem that I am referring to. Yeah, here we go. Coming back to you. Here we go. Okay, so those of you that are in Writing Across the Dharma Bridge, you saw this just last week, so it'll be familiar. It's called Trophic Cascade by Camille T. Dongji. After the reintroduction of gray wolves to Yellowstone and, as anticipated, their culling of deer, trees grew beyond their deer stunt of the mid-century, beyond the deer stunt of the mid-century. In their upreach, songbirds nested, who scattered seed for underbrush, and in that cover, warrened snowshoe hare. Weasel and water shrew returned, also vole, and came soon hawk and falcon, bald eagle, kestrel, and with them hawk shadow, falcon shadow. Eagle shade and kestrel shade haunted newly buried runnels, where deer no longer rummaged, cautious as they were now of being surprised by wolves. Berries brought bear, while undergrowth and willows, growing now right down to the river, brought beavers who dam. Muskrats came to the dams, and tadpoles came to the night song of the fathers of tadpoles. With water striders, the dark gray American dipper bobbed in fresh pools of the river, and fish stayed, and the bear who fished, also culled deer fawns, and to their kill scraps came vulture and coyote, long gone in the region until now, and their scattered seed, and more trees, brush, and berries grew up along the river that had run straight, and so flooded, but thus dammed, compelled to meander, is less prone to overrun. Don't you tell me this is not the same as my story. All this life born from one hungry animal, this whole new landscape, the course of the river changed. I know this. I reintroduced myself to myself, this time a mother, after which nothing was the same. Okay, so let's just dive right in there, see where it takes you. And you might just recall any moments where, where Vajra energy came to balance the system of yourself, or if you can't quite think of that as a context, just places that you've reintroduced yourself to yourself. And if you can't really think of that as context, you might reflect upon how you've seen that in the world. When clarity comes to a scenario, when mirror-like wisdom comes to a scenario, you can just see what comes through for you. If you can't think of anything, just start with the line, what I really want to say is, or what I could talk about is, and then see where you go. Sometimes that can be a nice refrain. I could talk about, and then just see how you fill in that sentence. Come back and say, I could talk about. Just talk about all the things you could talk about if you felt like talking. If you don't feel like talking, if you don't feel like writing, you can stretch, you can sit, you can get a cup of tea, you can be you. So let's do 5 minutes to begin, just a short write. You start to wrap that up. Okay. How are we doing out there? Okay. So again, just to reiterate, you can always stay with what you're doing and ignore the moving on thing that's happening over here by turning down your volume until you are ready for re-engagement. One of the things that we characteristically do in these sessions is not always, but often after a write, I just give you a minute to look over what you wrote and then to share any little snippets, any little line, a couple of lines that feel potent for you. So go ahead and do that. Just look over what came through. And if you feel called to share in the chat, you can just type into the chat whatever felt potent. Okay. Hmm. So I'm going to just read a few. I'm not going to read all of them, probably just some of the shorter ones. Love them all, though. I saw the mirror and smashed it. Gratitude for the perception of the new, the unknown. Tears flowing freely, an ache in the heart. The pillow hugs, softly sung songs. Facing the beasts of memory, I let them run at my side. I introduced myself to myself. The river is seen anew and yet still the same, not realizing that this dimming gets stuck inside and impacts energy flow, not just anger, but joy, happiness, and compassion. Channeling a choir of color through my core. My animus side wants choice, always determined and calculated. My anima is reconciled to the default, if the default is the spring of the world. The one who made me hungry for life, can I feed her even when I am starved? Am I? I watch the wind gently playing with tree leaves as it caresses and tugs. The leaves are always available and receptive, joyful in their twists, turns, and acrobatics. Beautiful. Approaching equinox, letting go, achieving the blessing of balance, arising, cascading, continuing, redefining, realigning. How each day so many hide from this moving change of life, of the world. How do I avoid this change too? Or how can I face, allow, be, and surrender to this change, which brings each day, each moment? Okay, so these next few slides are, I think, if I remember the order, I'm gonna skip this slide, but if you want to come back and read it, it'll be in the video. Obviously, you can pause and read it. It's really about the Buddha family, and the movement from Buddha family to Vajra Buddha family is interesting. So, but moving into Vajra, we're going to just talk a little bit about the liberated manifestation of the Vajra family. So the first movement in the practice of the five wisdom lights, the five dakinis, is from the formlessness of Buddha family into Vajra, which is associated with form, mirror-like wisdom, and uncomplicated clarity. So the element is water. The association is with winter, texture, and form, and precision, simplicity, clarity, uncomplicatedness, practicality, uncompromising energy. And as you already heard, of course, the encumbered pattern is aversion or anger. Aggression, frustration, anger, resentment, rage, irritation, any manifestation of aversion, which is obviously one of the, well, not obviously maybe, but aversion is one of the three central poisons. Okay, central poison is ignorance of our true nature. The two other central poisons on the central axis of the mandala are aversion or anger and craving. And obviously, anger can do great harm, but never finding a line can do greater harm still. So, uh, this work is of great value. And also the remembrance that underneath or inside or somehow equivalent with, even though that's confusing, the encumbered expression of Vajra is clarity. So underneath the encumbered expression, underneath anger and aversion, is clarity, mirror-like wisdom. So you can think about that in kind of practical ways. Like, if you get angry, maybe it's because you had a clear boundary and it got violated. Or maybe there was a clarity inside, but you couldn't articulate it. And so anger then kind of comes to try to handle the situation because it wasn't handled. Um, so, in sort of a practical sense, when anger arises in a way that's harmful, identifying what the clarity is underneath and kind of finding some, like allowing that clarity to be sovereign, to be fully expressed, to direct your movements can be the medicine. But also, and I don't remember if I have slides about this here. I feel like I do somewhere, but I don't know. I don't want to move on yet. But well, if I go back, this slide shows the shame shields, which, as I said, we don't really have time to go into fully. But in in some this is a modification of the official kind of teachings on the shame shields. But the idea with the shame shields is that shame is a really powerful human emotion, maybe the most powerful. It dictates so much of human movement, and it's such a deeply uncomfortable feeling, and it so captivates our attention that we can't quite tolerate it. And so there's a tendency then to shield against shame. And on the central axis, the vertical axis rather, of this mandala, are the three sort of official shame shields as they were taught to me. And then I've kind of modified the map a little bit by adding what's on the horizontal axis. But think about how you respond when you have a shame spiral happen, even a small one. You get deeply embarrassed, not just embarrassed, but like, oh, I'm somehow the wrong person. A physiological response to shame, sweating, tingling, like that kind of response happens for you. Think about how you deal with it. Maybe you move away. Maybe you kind of disassociate somehow. Pretty common. Maybe you move against. That's the what I'm lining up here with Vajra energy. Maybe you push back against shame. You accuse whoever made you feel ashamed of being wrong somehow. You find a way to critique the source of the shame. So you move against it. Maybe you move toward. Maybe you do a little bit of like sucking up, or just trying to fit in. And then on the kind of horizontal axis here, maybe you move into the mind, maybe you move into activity. So, Vajra like can be a powerful way to not sometimes we're shamed in a sense by society's rather arbitrary and ridiculous rules for us. You are this kind of a human and you're supposed to be this way, and you should be ashamed of yourself if you're not. And we can push back against that in a really healthy Vajra way by kind of moving against in a healthy way. But there are also moments where the Vajra energy comes forth in its more encumbered way. So this is again, a very kind of perfunctory, superficial explanation, but I trust you'll draw your own insights from this and, find ways to work with it. Okay, I'm going to move forward and on into our next right. Up, up, up. Okay, so this is How Dark the Beginning by Maggie Smith. All we ever talk of is light. Let there be light. There was light then, good light. But what I consider dawn is darker than all that. So many hours between the day receding and what we recognize as morning, the sun cresting like a wave that won't break over us, as if light were protective, as if no hearts were flayed, no bodies broken on a day like today. In any film, the sunrise tells us everything will be all right. Danger wouldn't dare show up now, dragging its shadow across the screen. We talk so much of light. Please let me speak on behalf of the good dark. Let us talk more of how dark the beginning of a day is. Okay, so just an invitation to kind of play with how, how even confusion shows up. We may have confusion around what we want. There may be no clarity. And so let yourself be with that which is not clear in order to perhaps unveil, in order to perhaps find some access to clarity itself. Okay. Does anybody else want to read this? You can raise your hand, or I think you have the freedom to just unmute if you want to read. Okay, Laurel. You can unmute yourself, I
How
think.
Dark the Beginning by Maggie Smith. All we ever talk of is light. Let there be light. There was light, then good light. But what I consider dawn is darker than all that. So many hours between the day receding and what we recognize as morning. The sun cresting like a wave that won't break over us. As if light were protective, as if no hearts were flayed, no bodies broken on a day like today. In any film, the sunrise tells us everything will be all right. Danger wouldn't dare show up now, dragging its shadow across the screen. We talk so much of light. Please, let me speak on behalf of the good dark. Let us talk more of how dark the beginning of a day is.
Thank you, Laurel.
Thank you. It's exquisite.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, let's take another 5. Okay, start wrapping that up. And again, just notice what came through for you. And if there's anything you'd like to share, go ahead and put it in the chat. Okay, and I'm going to let you just peruse what comes into the chat yourselves. I'm going to take us into the next right. Okay, and I'm actually going to give you two poems to work with, and you can kind of choose. They're both quite short. You can just sort of choose what energy you want to work with. Okay, so this one, Boundaries by Michaela Robin. No is a necessary magic. No draws a circle around you with chalk and says, I have given enough. Okay, and we're going to move to the next one. Yes, burden and blessing, two blossoms on the same branch. To be so lost in this radiant wilderness. Okay, so one mention is that the Buddha family after the Vajra Buddha family is the Ratna Buddha family. And the liberation of the Ratna Buddha family is the awareness of sameness, such deep interconnectedness at the level of the infinite that total equanimity can arise. So technically the liberation is usually called equanimity. And also the word sameness is often used, but it's this sense of such profound interconnectedness. Everything arising from the same source, burden and blessing, two blossoms on the same branch, to be so lost in this radiant wilderness. Okay, but you might choose to work with this one, Boundaries by Michaela Robin. No is a necessary magic. No draws a circle around you with chalk and says, I have given enough. Okay, so I'm just going to let you take it away, and let's again do 5 minutes. 5 minutes is the magic today. And I'll just go back and forth for this first minute or so. I'll kind of flip back and forth between the two poems so you can see them both if you need to. Okay, but timer is running. Okay. Go ahead and wrap that up. And once again, feel free to share in the chat. Okay, I'll give you another minute or so to put shares in the chat if you wish. Okay. Lovely. All right. So now we have 20 minutes to go, and I think it is a good moment for us to at least briefly kind of get into our bodies, okay? So I was thinking about, and I did some writing for those of you that got it. I sent an email kind of about how, this Vajra energy, in a sense, is like what the body is doing all the time when it heals itself. I was thinking about Vajra as the capacity to sort of recognize what is self and what is not self. And obviously, when a body is healing, it's what it's doing the whole time. A couple of our Dharma Bridgers were really sick last week, and I was just thinking about their immune systems and how, like, that fighting the good fight is the immune system recognizing what is self and what is not self, and figuring out how to do all that kind of, macrophages in there, consuming viruses, that kind of stuff, and I think we do it all the time. When we're going to go into some movement right now, and I'm actually going to ask. I'm going to give you a lot of freedom as to how you want to move, but I'm hoping that you'll kind of take yourself into those edge spaces. Like take yourself into shapes, into poses, into positions that are a little edgy for you, so you can feel that edge. So that your instinct can feel no. So you can get close enough to sensation that you are kind of compelled to listen to where the no is, so that you can then find the yes. And thanks, Tessia. Bye. Nice to see you. And I'll see you in a week and a half on retreat. And by the way, for anybody who's open, there's still space on the retreat that is starting on the 10th. And we now have released a 2-night option instead of just the 4-night option. And I'll put slides up about that at the very end. But go ahead and take yourself to standing, if you would. And, start out kind of gentle. And you might start out by just taking your feet maybe hip distance apart, and just shaking a little bit. Just finding a little bit of movement. Just creating a little bit of liquidity as you move around a little bit randomly. And just building a little bit of warmth and a little bit of awareness of the body, maybe a little bounce. Okay. And then if it feels right to you, again with the feet just a little wider than hip distance apart, bend the knees slightly so you can just feel a little bit of the warmth in the thighs. And then start to swing the arms a bit and swing them in a way where you're kind of shaking them down. And you might have a little bit of movement in the legs also, where there's a very slow, kind of measured uh, pulsing, kind of almost a really slow bounce, but the emphasis is on down into ground. Okay. Dropping, rooting, centering, feeling ground. Okay, and then just stop that if it feels right. And just stand for a second and stand in what we call Tadasana, mountain pose. And breathe. And just notice the aliveness in the body. Notice the warmth. And then take your legs open wide apart. And again, as I said earlier, like what I hope for you is that you find your own movement that makes the most sense. But if you choose to, you can follow my instructions here. So legs wide apart, feet parallel, knees a little bit bent, hands on the knees, sitting bones reaching back, torso reaching forward. And then just do a little side to side twist. And of course, as you twist, you're meeting an edge and you're finding an edge. And you get to pay attention to what feels good, what feels salubrious, and what does not. Just notice your own instincts here and how you find boundaries. Okay, and then come back to center and turn your toes out a little. And you can definitely be on a chair for this one. But I'm kind of in this wide, deep squat. So it's not going to take long for me to find the no. Not going to take long for this to get to where it's too much, or it's too much stretch and too much intensity. And if you're super flexible, you actually want to be a little contained in this kind of an opening. So you want to squeeze a little bit toward the midline. Okay, and then when you're ready, just press yourself up from there and come into some kind of a forward fold. So I'm in a wide angle forward fold. You might do a down dog. You might just sit in your chair and hinge forward and bring your hands to the ground. You might do a child's pose. Okay, so some kind of forward fold. Okay, and then slowly bring yourself out of that. And let's do some kind of an asymmetrical lunge type thing. So you can come into basically like a warrior one shape, which is what I'm in. I'm just with my hands on the hips for right now. You could also come down deeper. So you might want to be down on the ground with the back knee down. It's up to you. Okay, so just find what works for your body. And obviously, if you hold this very long, you're going to really feel the warmth. And you're going to find those edge spaces where the body says no. And you get to kind of interpret in your own body in a way that nobody else can. Nobody can do this for you. You can't outsource this in any way. You get to interpret, you get to listen and kind of determine when the no really means no and when there's just a resistance because the strength is still developing. Okay, and you get to switch when you're ready. lots of options. So I'm doing kind of a crescent actually with the back heel lifted. Obviously you can keep your hands down, you can reach the arms up, you can come down into a low lunge, you can do this kind of the sideways on a chair works okay on certain chairs. Okay, or you can do something entirely different, totally up to you. Take care of your low back, kind of rooting down. And you might find movement inside of it as well. Doesn't have to be static. Okay. And bring yourself up when you're ready, and we're going to come back down to sitting pretty soon. So you might want to shake it out or just feel if there's anything else that your body needs, or maybe what you want now is shavasana. That's fine too. Let's water. Okay, so we have time for one more right. And let me go ahead and bring it up. Let me see. I have, of course, had more poems than we need, but this one feels like a nice place to take us. Get us there. Whoops, it's not working. Hang on. Give me a moment. Take your time, of course. You might still be stretching. Okay, I have found my way. So Hirschfield, My Species by Jane Hirschfield. Even a small purple artichoke, boiled in its own bittered and darkening waters, grows tender and sweet. Patience, I think. My species keep testing the spiny leaves, the spiny heart. So I picked this one because it reminds me a little bit of titration, which is, a term from chemistry where you kind of add a little bit of a compound into a solution to see what happens. And the term has now it gets utilized kind of in trauma healing and in therapy circles, kind of how we work with something really difficult, how we work potentially with anger, how we work with any really overwhelming emotion, getting a little closer to it, and then giving ourselves the freedom to back away, moving toward, moving away, moving toward, moving away. So, yeah, anybody else want to read this one? Hi, Regine. Go for it. Did you unmute on purpose? Maybe not. Are you there? Okay, I thought Regina was going to read to us, but maybe not. So I'll read it again.
I can read it, Kelly, if you want somebody else to give it a go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Diana.
Okay. My Species by Jane Hirschfield. Even a small purple artichoke, boiled in its own bittered and darkening waters, grows tender and sweet. Patience, I think. My species keep testing the spiny leaves, the spiny heart.
Thank you. It was a treat to hear your voice. Okay, so just play with that. See where it takes you. We'll do another 5. Start to gently bring that to a close. Okay. And again, if you want to share, please do. And just take your time. Okay. So let me say a few things about retreat for those that need to leave right at the top of the hour. So, a retreat. So, I'm headed to this spot, which hopefully you can see. Um, that is, I'm trying to figure out the view actually. Oh, that's the back of the toll house. So, it's really a lovely, like pretty magical, mystical spot, Mendocino County. And there's a few other images. There are lots of different housing options. We're doing it fully live this time. There's no virtual retreat. And the format of it will be kind of like quite aligned with what we've been looking at today. And obviously, we'll get to go so much deeper, and you'll get to really understand the entirety of well, not the entirety, but you'll get a much deeper understanding of the mandala. And we'll do a lot of writing. So I would love for you to come. I'll grab this link and put it in the chat for you so that you can check it out if you're interested. It's coming right up. It actually begins on Wednesday of next week, or week after next, sorry, Wednesday the 10th. And there's also the option to come just Friday through Sunday. Okay, so I'm going to stick that in the chat for you if you want to check it out. All right, and let's see. Well, just a couple little shares. Allow the embittered heart its time and care to learn, remember what it was born for, to love and be loved. Thank you. All right, and if anybody has any kind of questions that have arisen about this, about the practice, about the mandala in general, about working with Vajra, or any sort of inquiries that they want to voice here or anything, we have we have time. If anybody wants to read actually a piece, I'm very open to that as well. Anyone? It's a big opportunity. Okay. Well, I'll just kibitz a little bit here and give you a chance to raise your hand if you're mulling it over, if you're feeling yourself like slightly on the edge. Obviously, I began with kind of a little bit of an overview of the mandala and the correlation that I see between how shame is looked at and how the shame shields are conceived in kind of another in psychological work. And I think that, the sharing our work, even in like really small ways, even the sharing in the chat is a really powerful opportunity to kind of come up against what visibility evokes inside of us, and lots of us have been really trained to not be visible, to not share our voice, to not fully express. And so it's a potent way to reconceive of how that energy sits within you, and a potent way to notice in what different ways we shield ourselves from that feeling. So I'll let you just sit with that and see what comes through for you as you carry this out into your lives. We'll share the recording. It'll probably come out in an email tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, and hopefully I will see a few more on retreat. We'll send the email will include information about that as well. And I appreciate you. It's a real delight to get to be with you. Thank you so much. Okay. Oh, be well.